Hello there students, how are you all today? This is your teacher Ashar Khan from Shiv Jyoti Educational Group Kota, and I welcome you all to our video lecture. So students, today let us learn history. We are learning chapter number 5 of your history book, that is Kingdoms, Kings and an Early Republic. So open your history book on page number 46 so that we may begin the process of learning. Okay, have your pencil ready in your hand as well, because we will be underlining a lot of important stuff. Now, let us begin our chapter. So, our first topic is how some men became rulers. You all know what a ruler is. A ruler is a king, right? We are learning about kingdoms, kings and early republic. Students, up until now in civics, we have learned about two forms of democracy, that is monarchy and democracy, right? We have learned about two forms of government up until now, that is monarchy and democracy. What happens in both of them? If you remember, in a monarchy system, the hereditary government follows. How so? Means the sons of the king become the next king, and in democracy, people elect their own rulers, correct? Now, in this paragraph, we are learning that how some men became rulers. So let us read. Choosing leaders or rulers by voting is something that has become common during the last 50 years or so. There's a small story given on top of this chapter. Let's read that. See now, there's a boy called Shankaran. He woke up to see his grandparents all ready to go and vote. They wanted to be the first to reach the polling booth. Why? Shankaran wanted to know why were they so excited to vote. Then his grandfather replied, "We can choose our rulers today." You all are very familiar with the election process. What happens then? Your parents or elders, right? They go and vote for whoever they want to by choosing them, by pressing the button. That's called voting. But this is a new method of choosing rulers. How? In the earlier times, right? We are learning about history, past stuff. पहले के ज़माने में जो rulers थे, how they were selected. So let us read now. How did men become rulers in the past? How did men become rulers in the past? Some of the Rajas we read about in chapter were probably chosen by the Jana. Jana means the people, underline this. Jana means the people. Okay, now, but around 3000 years ago, we find some changes taking place in the ways in which Rajas were chosen. Now, people began to come up with a new method of choosing their rulers. Some men now became recognized as Rajas by performing very big sacrifices. Now the men, important men who used to be the rulers, they started taking the term Raja by performing sacrifice. Now which sacrifice was it? Come to your next paragraph, that is the Ashwamedh. Okay, let us learn what is Ashwamedh. Now the Ashwamedh was the horse sacrifice. Okay, what was it? Horse sacrifice. Okay, now let us learn. It's a very interesting concept, Ashwamedh. So I hope that you are paying your full attention here. See now, it was one ritual. Now in this ritual, a horse was let loose to wander freely, and it was guarded by the Raja's men. A king, when he realized that I am the most superior king in the entire area, what the king will do? He will set out a horse, right? In Sanskrit, horse is called Ashwa. That's the word Ashwamedh comes from, horse sacrifice. Okay? Now, the horse was let loose. The king, what he used to do, he would set the horse loose in his kingdom. The horse was guarded by the Raja's men. Now, if the horse wandered into the kingdoms of other Rajas and they stopped it, they had to fight. Now, if the horse, okay, entered into some other kingdom of some other king, and that king stopped that horse, now that king's army will fight the army of the kings who is starting the Ashwamedh. Right? They will fight, and then they will decide which king is superior, whose army is bigger. But if the king allowed it to pass without capturing it, then what happened? See, if they allowed the horse to pass, it meant that they accepted that the Raja who wanted to perform the sacrifice was stronger than them. But if the king allowed that horse to pass from their kingdoms, that means that they are accepting that whoever started this Ashwamedh is superior than them, right? It was a peaceful way of surrendering to the other king by accepting that yes, you are performing the Ashwamedh and we are allowing it to pass. That means you are superior than us. But if that king captured it, if that king captured the horse, then they had to fight it. Okay? Now, these Rajas were then invited to the sacrifice, which was performed by specially trained priests who were rewarded with gifts. Now, after the Ashwamedh was complete, when the horse came back to the kingdom it started from, now all the kings who surrendered, they will come to the kingdom of that king who started the Ashwamedh, right? They will all come bearing gifts. There was a very special ritual which used to take place by the king who started the Ashwamedh, and all the other kings would come and give gifts to him. Now, the Raja who organized the sacrifice was recognized as being very powerful, and all those who came brought gifts for him. Now, the king who started, the Raja who started the Ashwamedh was recognized as a powerful ruler, the most powerful ruler in the entire area, and all the other rulers, they used to come and give gifts to him. Okay, समझ में आया क्या हुआ? That the king started the Ashwamedh sacrifice, he started the horse sacrifice. Now the horse will wander into the other kingdoms. If someone else captured it, then the two armies will fight. If they didn't, then they are surrendering to that king. Now, the Raja was a central figure in this ritual. Underline this. Third paragraph, first line. The Raja was a central figure in these rituals. Okay. He often had a special seat, a throne or a tiger skin. Now the place where he used to sit, we all know the king would sit on a very beautiful throne, right? It was a throne or tiger skin. Before moving on to the next chapter, next page, student, please mark the first internal question of this chapter. On page number 46, mark the first internal question. That is, I am reciting it, listen to it carefully and write it on the blank space which is provided here in your book. What was the ritual? What was the ritual used to recognize as a ruler? What was the ritual used to recognize as a ruler? Answer is very simple. Second paragraph, first line, the Ashwamedh or horse sacrifice. Okay, write the question here, internal question number 1. What was the ritual used to recognize as a ruler? And mark the answer on the second paragraph, first line, the Ashwamedh or horse sacrifice. Now, let us take a quick glance at this one. So students, now let's see some more details about the Ashwamedh sacrifice. Now, see, the horse sacrifice was a means for a king to extend their territory. Means if a king is ruling over an area and he wants to expand it, right? He wants to increase his area over which he is ruling. He will start the Ashwamedh. Okay, a sacrificial horse was chosen. After performing the puja, it was set free to roam wherever it would go. Okay, now what used to happen? The horse was set free to roam and it was guarded by the king's army. The horse was in the front and at the back of it, the king's army would follow the horse. Now, whichever territory the horse would go, whatever territory the horse covered without any challenge from other rulers, now that area became the king's domain, right? Wherever the horse is going and if no king is challenging it, now that area will come under the king who started the horse. Okay, anyone, now what happened to those kings who used to oppose it? Anyone daring to oppose this doctrine had to face the might of the king's army. Now whoever captured the horse will have to face the army of that king. Ashwamedh was a way to declare the might of an emperor, and by performing this ritual, the king used to become an emperor. Okay, a king rules over a kingdom, which is a small area, we have already learned this, and an emperor rules over a very large area. He rules over an empire, right? If you would remember in Ramayana, the twin sons of Sri Ram challenged the horse sent by their father. If you would remember, Lava and Kush also stopped the Ashwamedh sacrifice started by their father. At the end of the year, the horse would return after forming many useful alliances. Now, whichever king would let the horse pass, it would become an ally, it would become a friend of the king, right? A retinue of soldiers came with the horse. Now, the kings used to send their soldiers and gifts along with the horse back to the king who started it. a grand yajna or yagya or ceremony was held to which all allied kings were invited. Now the king will have a very grand ceremony. Okay, he will invite all the kings and he will perform a very big sacrifice yagya. The king sat on a special throne. You can see, you have already seen in many of the TV serials and books and comic books, right? That the king, he always is seated on a very big throne made up of made up of gold and so on. The wives and sons perform various rituals, and the charioteer, what is a charioteer? You know, when the king goes to battle, he is on a chariot. वो किस पे होता है? एक chariot पे होता है, that is रथ. Now the charioteer is someone who is driving that chariot, right? That charioteer. And why the charioteer is important? Look in your book. Last line on page number 46, start from there. His charioteer, who was his companion in the battlefield and witnessed his exploits, chanted tales of his glory. Now the charioteer who was the companion of the king in the battle, who had witnessed his exploits, he would chanted tales of his glory, that whatever brave things the king has done, the charioteer would chant it. His relatives, especially his wives and sons, had to perform a variety of minor rituals. The other Rajas were simply spectators who used to sit and watch the performance of the sacrifice. Now, who performed the ritual? Underline this. Priests performed the rituals, including the sprinkling of the sacred water. Now, the priests are performing the ritual. Okay, the king is seated and the priests are performing the ritual. They are chanting all the mantra and shloks, correct? And they used to sprinkle the sacred water on the king. The ordinary people, the Vish or Vaishya, brought gifts. Now the ordinary people of that kingdom, of that empire, will now bring gifts to the king, because now he's become an emperor. Okay, but there were ordinary people. Apart from ordinary people, Shudras were excluded from ritual. So let us learn about the Varnas now. Who were the Vaishyas and who were the Shudras? Now students, now let us discuss about next topic of the chapter, that is the Varnas. On page number 47, this is the topic given in the yellow paragraph. So let's read that now. I know you are already familiar with the caste system. Now in history we are learning how it started. Okay, so let us learn. We have many books that were composed in North India. We have many old books, but there are 4 ancient books that are very famous. You already know their names. They are the Vedas. How many Vedas do we have? We have 4 Vedas. The oldest Ved is the Rig Ved. Then others we have is Sam Ved, Yajur Ved, and Atharva Ved. Okay, so we have 4 ancient books or Vedic books, because that was the Vedic age when all these books were written. These books contains the ancient people's life, how they used to live, how they used to pray, how they used to perform rituals and sacrifices. So let us learn. These books are often called later Vedic because they were composed after the Rig Veda. These include the Samved, Yajurved and Atharved, as well as other books. Now these books were composed by priests. Who wrote these books? Priests. Okay, and describe how rituals were to be performed, and they also contain rules about society. In these books it is written how they are supposed to perform the rituals and how the society is supposed to function. Now, in a kingdom, in an empire, there were different people in society, okay? There were priests and warriors, farmers, herders, traders, craftsperson, laborers, fishing folk, and forest people. Now, there were some priests and warriors who were very rich, and some farmers and traders. Now, others, including many herders, craftsperson, laborers, fishing folk, and hunters and gatherers, were poor. Now, the society was divided, okay? We have read these Vedas, and through them, we have learned that the society was divided into occupation. Some occupations were, people were very rich, while some were poor. Come to the third paragraph. Now the priests divided these people into 4 groups. Okay. What we did was, the priests divided the Varnas, okay, the people into 4 groups or Varnas. These were the 4 Varnas. Number 1, we had the Brahmins, okay. Number 2, we had Kshatriyas. Number 3 was Vaishyas. And lastly, we had the fourth one, which is Shudras. Okay, so what the priests did, they divided the society based on their occupations. Okay, they based what the people are doing. So divided society into 4 groups or varnas called Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. Let us read. Now the priests divided these groups into 4 varnas according to them. Each varna had a different set of functions. Now each people have some functions which they were supposed to do. Now the first varna was that of the Brahmins. Let us learn about it. So students, the first varna, the first group was that of the Brahmins. Okay, let us read first. Brahmins were expected to study and teach the Vedas. What was the duty of the Brahmins? See, priest ne jo ye groups divide kiye the, why did they divide it? So that each group has a different function. Now we are learning about the occupations of Brahmins, that what the Brahmins did in the society. The Brahmins taught the Vedas. Okay, they used to study and teach the Vedas to other people. They performed sacrifices and they also gave and received gifts. This was the occupation of Brahmins. Okay, Brahmins were expected to study and teach the Vedas, perform sacrifices and receive gifts. Now next is Kshatriya. In the second place were the rulers, also known as Kshatriyas. They were expected to fight battles and protect people. Now the Kshatriyas consisted of warriors and kings. They engaged in warfare, they protected people, they administered justice, they studied the Vedas. Now be very pay attention here, because the Kshatriyas were allowed to study the Vedas. Okay, they also got sacrifices performed and they gave gifts to others and received them as well. Okay, now the third one, which is the occupation of Vaishyas. Let's see. Third were the Vish or the Vaishyas. They were expected to be farmers, herders and traders. You all know what a farmer is. Herders and traders. Herders are those who raise animals and traders are merchants, okay, shopkeepers. Now both the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas could perform sacrifices. Okay, so the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are allowed to perform sacrifices. These were the people who engage in trade, agriculture and pastoralism. Pastoralism means herding. They studied the Vedas, they also got sacrifices performed and they used to make gifts. So these were the 3 castes, 3 varnas. Now let's come to the fourth one, which is the Vaishyas, Shudras. Okay, now let's come to the fourth one, duties of Shudras. Turn your page. Last were the Shudras, who had to serve the other 3 groups and they could not perform any ritual. Underline this first line on page number 48. That last varn was that of the Shudras and they had to serve the other 3 higher varnas. Now the people who used to come above them, they used to serve these people. They were servants. Okay, who were the 3 higher varnas? Brahmins, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. Often women were also grouped with the Shudras. Underline this as well. Both women and Shudras were not allowed to study the Vedas. Now the Brahman women, Kshatriya and Vaishya women, they were also not allowed to study the Vedas. Okay. Now the priests also said that these groups were decided on the basis of birth. All these groups were decided on the basis of birth. For example, if one's father and mother were Brahmins, then their son and daughter would also be Brahmin. And they were only supposed to study and teach the Vedas and they could not become kings, become merchants or traders or servants, right? Whatever occupation your parents had, you were supposed to serve in the same occupation and you could not change it. So this was a very wrong thing. Okay, some craftsperson, hunters and gatherers, they thought it was wrong. The priests, many people did not accept the system of Varna laid down by the Brahmins. Now people did not accept it. Why? Some kings thought that they were superior to the priests. Now the kings, the second Varna, started to think that we are superior. Others felt that the birth could not be the basis for deciding which one people belong to. Now other people felt that it is not right, that just because we are born into one Varna, we are supposed to serve that only. That is wrong. Besides, others felt that everybody should be able to perform rituals. We learned that the fourth Varna, that is the Shudras, were not allowed to perform ritual. So they felt that we should be also performing rituals for gods and goddesses. Now others condemned the practice of untouchability. Now what was untouchability? See here. Now we have learned that there were 4 Varnas, which was the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudras, correct? There were also some people who were regarded lower than Shudras, lower than the servants, and those people were called the untouchables. These were the outcasts, street sweepers and toilet cleaners, okay? Now priests classified some people as untouchables, people who were not allowed to be touched. They comprised of some craftsperson, hunters and gatherers, as well as people who help perform burials and cremations. What is cremation? When someone dies, their burning process, when they are burned, that is called cremation, okay? Their touch and sight was regarded as polluting, that if you touch the untouchables, you will be unclean, you will become polluted, they used to say that. Now, students, let's come to our next topic, which is the Janapads. So students, up until now we have learnt about how some men became rulers, we learnt about the Ashwamedh sacrifice, and then we learnt about the 4 Varnas. Now let us move on to our next topic, which is the Janapadas and Mahajanapadas. Okay, let's cover both of these topics. I hope you are paying attention here. Please make sure to underline what I am telling you to underline, because that's important stuff. Now, start with Janapadas. The Rajas who performed these big sacrifices were now recognized as being Rajas of Janapadas rather than Janas. Jana is a word we use to describe the people, okay? I made you underline this earlier. The Jana means people. So what does this word means? Okay? This word here, which is Janapada, right? What is the meaning of this word? Literally it means where the Jana, the people, set their foot. Where people set their foot and settle down. Now the cities, the people where now the places where these people used to live came to be known as Janapads. Okay. The word Janapada literally means the land where the Jana set its foot and settled down. Now archaeologists have expected a number of settlements in these Janapadas, such as Purana Kila in Delhi, Hastinapur near Meerut and Atranji Khera near Etah, which are the last 2 areas in Uttar Pradesh. They found that people in Janapadas, now people in the earlier cities, they used to live in huts and kept cattle as well as other animals. Okay, underline this. They found that people lived in huts and kept cattle as well as other animals. They also grew a variety of crops. Now the people who are living in huts, who are raising cattle, they used to grow crops such as rice, wheat, barley, pulses, sugarcane, sesame and mustard. Okay, so what is Janapada? It means basically a small area where the people set their foot and settled down. Jahan pe log rehte the. That place was called Janapada. Moving on, they also made earthen pots. Some of these were grey in colors and others were red. Even today we use earthen pots to store water in your house, correct? Now these pots which we have found in Janapadas, in the ancient Janapadas, they were grey in colors and some were red. One special type of pottery found at these sites is known as painted greyware. Underline this. There is a one special type of pottery we have found at this site which is known as painted greyware. As is obvious from the name, these grey pots had painted design which usually simple lines and geometric patterns. Some of the earthen pots were carefully designed. They were grey in color and on those pots beautiful geometric designs and lines were drawn. Okay, now let's come to Mahajanapadas. Okay, Mahajanapadas, as the name suggests, is big city. Okay, Janapada was just an area where people used to live. Mahajanapadas was a larger area. Okay, but the prefix that we are using here is Maha, that means big. Around 2500 years ago, some Janapadas became more important than others and were known as Mahajanapadas. Please underline this. About 2500 years ago from today, some Janapadas became more important, they became more big because we learned that the Rajas, what were they doing? They were performing the sacrifices and expanding their territory. So their smaller kingdom was now turning into a bigger empire, correct? So these Janapadas, these bigger Janapadas now came to be known as Mahajanapadas. Okay, some of these are shown on map as we will see. Most Janapadas had a capital city and many of these were fortified. Now the kings, what they used to do, they started to build walls around their cities. बड़ी-बड़ी walls वो बनाने लग गए अपनी city के चारों तरफ. Okay, these walls were built of wood, brick or stone. They were built of brick, wood and stone. To protect the people who were living inside the city. Why were the kings, why were the emperors building these walls around the city? So that they can protect the people. Turn the page. Now, forts were probably built because people were afraid of attacks from other kings and needed protection. Obviously, if I have a very large area, that means other kings might attack it. So they also used to build forts, okay, to protect themselves from other kings. It is also likely that some rulers wanted to show how rich and powerful they were by building really large, tall and impressive walls around their cities. Another reason can be, underline this, that some rulers wanted to show how rich and powerful they were. They just wanted to show off that we are rich and powerful, and that is why we are building so many big walls. In this way, the land and the people living inside the fortified area could be controlled more easily by the king. And another function of these walls were, now the king can control who is going out and coming in his city. Okay, these walls had gates, and whoever was going out and coming inside, the people used to keep a record of it, and the kings could control whoever is coming out and going in inside his Mahajanapadas. Building such huge walls required a great deal of planning. Thousands, if not lakhs of bricks or stones had to be prepared. Now, obviously, if it's a large area and you are building a wall around it, then you will need an enormous amount of bricks, wood and stone and other objects, other materials to build that wall. This in turn meant enormous labor provided possibly by thousands of men. Now, the walls, they will not be built in air or by magic, right? The walls were built by thousands and thousands of laborers, by people who used to work endlessly for days just to build the walls, okay, by men, women and children, and resources had to be found for all of this. Now the Rajas now begin maintaining armies as well. Underline this, okay, on page number 51, underline this. The new Rajas now begin maintaining armies. Now they started maintaining a big army so that they can protect their city if someone attacked it. Soldiers were paid regular salaries and maintained by king throughout the year. Now, whoever was strong enough to enter into the army, the soldiers, they were paid salaries and they were maintained by the king throughout the year. Payments were probably made using punch-marked coins, which you can see on page number 92. Okay, we will learn more about these coins in later chapters. Now, students, let us see some images related to Janpadas and Mahajanpadas. As I have just told you, the word Janpada, that means where the Jana, that is people, set their foot, that is Pad. Okay, that's where we get the term Janpada. That means where the people set their foot and started living. Next, we have found Janpadas at excavation sites. Okay, there were archaeologists who dug earth and they found the traces of ancient cities at Purana Kila in Delhi, Hastinapur in UP, Uttar Pradesh, and Atranji Khera in Uttar Pradesh. And plants and animals show that the people used to rear cattle as well as grow crops. And then we learned about pottery. Now that we have found different types of pots, earthen pots from the ground where the Janpadas used to be. Okay, we have found painted red grayware and grayware, painted redware and grayware. Now, let us come to Mahajanapadas. Okay, now 2500 years ago, big kingdoms started to develop. Janpadas were smaller kingdoms or smaller areas. Now, Mahajanpadas means bigger. Okay, the prefix here is Maha, that means big. Now, they were known as Mahajanpadas and had very well defined territories and governments. And as we learned, this is a map given on page number 49 in your book as well. You can see the important Mahajanapadas. Okay, Matsya. You should know that our place Rajasthan was once a part of a Mahajanpada which was called the Matsya Mahajanpada. Okay, in our earlier classes we have learnt about the Mauryan Empire, right? Before it was called Mauryan, it was the Magad Janpada. Okay, so these were all the Janpadas and Mahajanpadas which were prominent during the earlier time. You can have a quick look in your book as well of the same map. Now, Mahajanpada had a fortified capital. Now the kings of the Mahajanpada, what they used to do, they used to build huge walls and forts so that they can protect their people, so that they can control whoever is going out and coming inside. Okay, they used to safeguard the citizens, they protected the power of the ruler. Lands and the people living inside the fortified area could be controlled more easily by the king, right? The king can now control who is going out and coming inside. Planning was required to build huge walls which were made of bricks, stone, right? And it was built by enormous labor, thousands of men, women and children. The kings also used to maintain armies, okay? The kings maintained a regular army for the protection of his kingdom. If some other king attacked that army, attacked that area, his empire, he should be ready with his own army to fight that king, right? Payments of the soldiers were made by punch mark coins, okay? They were punched with various symbols and are called the punch mark coins.